My name is Carol, 67 years old, and until last month, I was a wealthy widow living in my Boston mansion. My adopted daughter Amelia and I used to have Sunday brunches every week. Then suddenly, my financial advisor called with devastating news. I never thought wealth was the glue holding our relationship together. Before I continue this heartbreaking story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you want to hear more life lessons from my experiences. I built my life around success and wealth. After graduating from business school in the early 80s, I jumped headfirst into Boston's booming real estate market. Back then, women in business faced constant challenges, but I was determined to prove myself. By 30, I had established Harrington Properties, specializing in luxury developments along the Massachusetts coastline. My business card read Carol Harrington President, and I felt immense pride every time I handed it out. My husband Thomas and I met at a charity gala when I was 32. He was a successful surgeon, brilliant and kind with a gentle smile that immediately drew me in. We married after a whirlwind romance, settling into a beautiful Victorian home in one of Boston's most prestigious neighborhoods. Our life together was comfortable, filled with dinner parties, theater nights, and summer vacations in Martha's Vineyard. Despite our success and happiness, something was missing. After 5 years of marriage and multiple fertility treatments, we faced the painful reality that biological children weren't in our future. The disappointment weighed heavily on us both, especially Thomas, who had always dreamed of a large family. Then one day, Thomas came home from the hospital with a story that would change our lives forever. He had treated an 8-year-old girl named Amelia, brought in by social services. Her mother had died of a drug overdose, and there was no father in the picture. Something about this quiet, solemn child with intelligent eyes touched Thomas deeply. "You should have seen her, Carol," he said that night. "So brave, trying not to cry when I stitched up her arm. She asked such thoughtful questions about everything I was doing. She's been bouncing around foster homes for 2 years now." Over the following weeks, we became certified foster parents and welcomed Amelia into our home. She arrived with a small backpack containing all her possessions, 2 sets of clothes, a worn teddy bear, and a dog-eared copy of Charlotte's Web. I still remember her first night with us. She stood in the doorway of her new bedroom, eyes wide at the canopy bed and shelves filled with books and toys we had hastily purchased. "Is this all for me?" she whispered, not daring to touch anything. "Yes, sweetheart," I replied, fighting back tears. "This is your room now." The adoption process took nearly a year, but finally, Amelia became legally ours. We celebrated with a party in the backyard, inviting our friends and Amelia's new classmates. Thomas photographed everything, capturing Amelia's shy smile as she blew out candles on a cake that read, "Welcome home forever, Amelia." Raising Amelia wasn't always easy. She was intelligent but guarded, quick to learn but slow to trust. Her early years had taught her that attachments could be severed without warning. Though she called us mom and dad, there was always a slight reserve in her manner, as if she was protecting herself from potential disappointment. Thomas was a natural father, patient and understanding. He would spend hours helping with her science projects or teaching her to play chess. I tried my best, but often felt I was falling short. My own mother had been distant and critical, leaving me with few positive examples of maternal behavior to follow. Instead, I showed my love through providing opportunities, the best schools, music lessons, summer camps, beautiful clothes. Looking back, I wonder if I was compensating for my emotional awkwardness with material generosity. When Amelia was 16, our family faced its first major crisis. Thomas was diagnosed with a rare heart condition. The next 2 years were a blur of hospitals, specialist appointments, and increasing limitations on his activities. Despite the best medical care money could buy, we lost him when Amelia was 18, just before she left for college. His death devastated us both. I threw myself into work, expanding the business to commercial properties across New England. Amelia channeled her grief into academics, graduating at the top of her class and getting accepted to Harvard Medical School. I was immensely proud, but worried that she was burying her emotions just as I was. Throughout Amelia's adult years, our relationship remained cordial but somewhat distant. We shared holiday dinners and occasional weekends, exchanging news about our lives without delving too deeply into feelings. She married Benjamin, a corporate lawyer, when she was 32. The wedding was lavish, held at the Four Seasons with no expense spared. I noticed Benjamin's approving glances at the champagne and the designer touches throughout the reception. By this time, my wealth had grown considerably. Thomas had left a substantial inheritance, and my business ventures had been remarkably successful. Walter Green had been my financial advisor for nearly 30 years, managing investments that yielded impressive returns. I trusted him completely, following his guidance through economic upturns and downturns alike. Walter was more than an advisor. He had become a friend. A widower himself, he understood the loneliness I sometimes felt in my large home. He would join me for dinner occasionally, bringing financial reports, but also conversation and companionship. I valued his steady presence in my life, especially as Amelia grew increasingly busy with her medical practice. Last month, Walter requested an urgent meeting. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with obvious anxiety as he entered my study. He sat heavily in the leather chair across from me, clutching his briefcase like a shield. "Carol," he said, his voice strained, "I'm afraid I have extremely troubling news." Walter's words hit me like a physical blow. The investment firm handling most of our assets had been exposed as part of an elaborate Ponzi scheme. 70% of my wealth was potentially gone. "How could this happen?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "We've been with Bradford Investments for decades." Walter ran his hand through his thinning gray hair. "The FBI has been investigating them for months. The company looked solid on paper, but they've been falsifying returns for years." "Carol, I'm so sorry. I should have spotted warning signs." I sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of the disaster. My mind calculated quickly. The Boston mansion would need to be sold, along with the summer house in Newport and my art collection. My lifestyle would change dramatically, though I wouldn't be destitute. I still had my company, though it had become more of a passive investment in recent years. "What do we do now?" I finally asked. "I've already contacted Harrison Daniels. He's the best financial attorney in the city," Walter replied. "We need to liquidate what we can immediately and move those assets to safer ground. I'm afraid your mansion will need to be put on the market." That evening, I wandered through the 14-room home that had been mine for 30 years. Each room held memories: Thomas spinning me around the foyer after closing on the house, Amelia sliding down the grand staircase banister despite my protests, holiday gatherings around the massive dining table. The thought of strangers living here sent a pang through my heart, but it was just a house after all. I would survive. The next morning, I called Amelia. We typically spoke once a week, usually brief check-ins about our lives and plans. This call would be different. "Amelia, dear, do you have a moment? I need to discuss something important." "Mom, can it wait? I'm between patients and only have about 5 minutes." "I'm afraid it's quite urgent. I've had some bad financial news." There was a pause on the line. "What kind of financial news?" I explained the situation as succinctly as possible, trying to keep my voice steady. "So, I'll be selling the house and moving to a smaller place. My lifestyle will change considerably, but I'll be all right." Another pause, longer this time. "How much are you losing exactly?" Amelia asked, her tone suddenly sharper. "About 70% of my liquid assets. The company is still mine, though its value has decreased in recent years." "So, what does this mean for everything else?" The hesitation in her voice struck me as odd. "Everything else? You know, your estate planning, the trusts, my inheritance." She spoke quickly, as if trying to get the words out before thinking better of them. I felt a cold sensation spread through my chest. "Amelia, I'm not dying. I'm just experiencing a financial setback." "Of course, Mom, I didn't mean it that way. Look, I need to see my next patient. Can we talk more about this on Sunday at brunch?" "Yes, certainly." I tried to keep disappointment from coloring my voice. "I'll see you then." Sunday came, but Amelia didn't. Instead, I received a text message 30 minutes after our scheduled meeting time. "Sorry, Mom, emergency at hospital, rain check." I responded with understanding, but something felt off. Amelia had never missed our brunches without calling personally. A text message seemed uncharacteristically casual for her typically formal communication style. The following week, I left 3 voicemails that went unreturned. Finally, I tried calling Benjamin's cell phone. "Carol, hello?" He answered, his voice unnaturally bright. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing, thank you. Is Amelia available? I've been trying to reach her." "She's been swamped at the hospital. You know how it is with her new department head position." In the background, I distinctly heard Amelia's voice. Is that her again? Tell her I'm not here. Benjamin coughed awkwardly. She just walked in. Let me see if she can talk. There was muffled conversation. Then Amelia came on the line. Mom, sorry I've been hard to reach. Things have been crazy here. I understand busy schedules, dear. I was hoping we could meet for lunch this week. I found a lovely apartment in Back Bay and would like your opinion. Back Bay, isn't that still rather expensive? I thought you were in financial trouble. Her tone surprised me. Concerned, but with an undertone of something else. Judgment, suspicion. I've lost wealth. Amelia not become destitute. I can still afford a modest apartment in a nice area. Right, of course. She paused. Mom, Benjamin and I have been talking. With your financial situation changing so dramatically, we're concerned about future implications. What implications? Well, to be blunt, if your finances continue to deteriorate, we're worried about becoming financially responsible for you in your later years. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. Amelia, I'm only 67 and in excellent health. I've lost money, but I still have resources. I'm not asking you for anything. Not yet, she replied, her voice cooling further. But these situations can escalate. Benjamin thinks we should meet with our attorney to discuss options. I agreed to the meeting, too stunned to argue. After hanging up, I sat motionless, replaying the conversation. The daughter I had raised for 30 years was suddenly treating me like a potential financial liability. That evening, I visited my friend Judith for dinner. We had been friends since business school, and she knew Amelia well, having attended birthday parties and graduations throughout the years. I don't understand what's happening, I confessed over wine. It's like Amelia has become a different person overnight. Judith sighed, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Carol, I hate to say this, but Amelia has always been calculating. Remember when she chose her specialty, plastic surgery wasn't her passion? It was the most profitable medical field. That's not fair, I protested weakly. She's always been practical. Practical, yes, but there's a difference between practical and mercenary. Have you considered that her affection might have been somewhat conditional? I shook my head, unwilling to accept this characterization of my daughter. Yet I couldn't dismiss the coldness in her voice during our last conversation, or the fact that her concern had centered entirely on how my financial situation might affect her, not on my well-being. 2 days later, I received an email that confirmed my worst fears. The subject line read, Legal Correspondence, Amelia Harrington Brooks. The sender was Benjamin's law firm. The message was brief and devastating. Dear Mrs. Harrington, on behalf of our client, Amelia Harrington Brooks, we are writing to formally request a dissolution of the existing legal financial obligations was between yourself and our client. This includes any provisions in your will, trust arrangements, or other estate planning documents that create future financial entanglements. We request a meeting at your earliest convenience to execute the necessary documentation. Sincerely, Robert Jenkins, Eskrun, Brooks Jenkins and Associates. My daughter wanted to legally sever our financial ties. She was effectively disowning me because I could no longer provide the inheritance she had been counting on. I printed the email with shaking hands, then reached for the phone to call Walter. I needed advice from someone who still had my best interests at heart. The law office of Brooks Jenkins and Associates occupied the 27th floor of a gleaming downtown tower with panoramic views of Boston Harbor. I sat alone in the sleek conference room, dressed in one of my designer suits, perhaps for the last time given my new financial reality. The door opened and Amelia entered, followed by Benjamin and an older man I assumed was Robert Jenkins. Amelia had always resembled Thomas more than me, with her tall frame and serious dark eyes. Today those eyes barely met mine as she took a seat across the polished table. Mrs. Harrington. Jenkins began adjusting his glasses. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. We have prepared documents that will formalize the separation of financial obligations between yourself and your daughter. I'd like to understand why this is necessary, I said, looking directly at Amelia. We're family. Families support each other through difficult times. Amelia finally met my gaze. Mom, this isn't personal. It's about protecting ourselves from potential liability. Your financial situation has changed dramatically, and we need to ensure that our own financial planning isn't compromised. Liability? I repeated incredulously. I raised you from the age of 8. I paid for your private schooling, your college education, your medical school tuition. I've never asked you for a penny in return. Benjamin cleared his throat. Carol, with all due respect, those were parental obligations you willingly took on. No one forced you to adopt Amelia or pay for her education. My hands clenched in my lap. No, Benjamin, those weren't obligations. They were expressions of love, something neither of you seems to understand at the moment. Amelia's face flushed. That's unfair. We have legitimate concerns about your financial management. You've lost 70% of your assets through poor investment choices. I was the victim of fraud, Amelia. There's a difference. Nevertheless, Jenkins interjected smoothly. My clients wish to formalize the separation of financial responsibilities. These documents essentially remove any expectation of inheritance or financial support in either direction. I took the papers he slid across the table but didn't open them. Amelia, do you remember when you were accepted to Harvard Medical School? You came home with the letter practically dancing with excitement. Do you remember what I did? She shifted uncomfortably. You were pleased. I was beyond pleased. I was bursting with pride. That night, I transferred $1 million into a special account specifically to cover your medical school expenses. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to ensure you could focus entirely on your studies without financial stress. Mom, that was generous, but it wasn't generosity, it was love. My voice remained steady, though I felt anything but calm. When you and Benjamin bought your first home, who gave you the down payment as a wedding gift? Benjamin spoke up. We've always been appreciative of your financial support, Carol. Have you? Because right now it feels as if the only thing you appreciated was the money itself, not the intention behind it. Amelia's expression hardened. That's not fair. We're simply being practical about a changed situation. No, Amelia, you're being cruel about a changed situation. There's a difference. I stood up, gathering my purse. I won't be signing these documents today. I need time to review them with my own attorney. Mom, please don't make this difficult. Amelia said, a note of irritation entering her voice. We're trying to create clear boundaries. The boundary you're creating is between mother and daughter, not between financial entities. I moved toward the door, then paused. When Thomas died, do you remember what I told you at the funeral? Amelia looked down at the table. You said that family is what remains when everything else is stripped away. Yes. I believed that then, and I believe it now. I'm disappointed to discover you don't share that belief. As I left the building, tears finally broke through my composed facade. The beautiful spring day felt mockingly cheerful as I walked to the parking garage, my mind reeling with the realization that my daughter, my only family, viewed me primarily as a financial resource, not as a person to be loved. The drive home to my soon-to-be-sold mansion was a blur. Inside, I moved through rooms that suddenly felt cavernous and empty despite the expensive furnishings. I poured myself a small scotch, Thomas's favorite, and sat in his old study surrounded by books he would never finish reading. What would you do, Thomas? I whispered to the empty room. Where did we go wrong with her? No answer came, of course. Just the ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the hallway counting down the seconds of a life I no longer recognized. That night, I called Walter to update him on the meeting. They want you to sign away everything, he asked, outrage evident in his voice. After all you've done for her. Apparently investments in family can experience downturns too. I said, attempting humor to mask my pain. Carol, I'm so sorry. This must be devastating. It is, but at least now I know where I stand. Better to discover the truth now than when I might actually need her help someday. Walter was quiet for a moment. What will you do? I sighed, looking around at the room that had witnessed so many family moments. I'll move forward. Sell this place, find somewhere new to live. Perhaps this is an opportunity to reassess what really matters in life. That's a remarkably positive outlook. Walter said gently. But it's okay to be angry too, you know. Oh, I'm angry, I admitted. But anger won't change Amelia's heart. Only she can do that if she chooses to. After we hung up, I climbed the grand staircase to my bedroom for what felt like one of the last times. On the landing wall hung family photographs: Amelia's adoption day, her high school graduation, her wedding. Smiling faces captured in moments when we all believed family bonds were unbreakable. I touched the frame of my favorite photo, Amelia at age 10 sitting on Thomas's shoulders at the beach, both of them laughing into the camera. The little girl in that picture had trusted us completely, had believed we would always be there for her. Somewhere along the way, that trust had transformed into calculation. Love had become a transaction. And I was left to wonder whether anything about our relationship had been genuine or if I had simply been a convenient path to privilege and prosperity for a child who had learned early that security could be fleeting. 3 days after the devastating meeting with Amelia and her lawyer husband, my phone rang early in the morning. Walter's name flashed on the screen. "Carol, are you sitting down?" His voice vibrated with an emotion I couldn't immediately identify. "I am now," I replied, lowering myself onto a kitchen stool. "What's happened? More bad news." "Quite the opposite." He took a deep breath. "The FBI just contacted me. They've recovered the funds from the Ponzi scheme." My free hand gripped the counter edge. "What? How is that possible? The investigation has been ongoing for months. They froze assets, seized bank accounts, confiscated properties. Bradford didn't manage to spend or hide as much as they initially thought." "So, what does this mean exactly?" My heart had begun racing, making it difficult to process his words. "It means you're getting your money back, Carol. All of it plus interest to compensate for damages. The investigators needed to keep everything confidential until now, which is why I couldn't tell you more." I sat in stunned silence, the implications slowly dawning on me. "Carol, are you still there?" "Yes," I whispered. "I'm just processing. This is extraordinary news." "There's more," Walter continued, his voice taking on an unusual hesitancy. "I wasn't entirely forthcoming with you earlier. I've been working with the FBI as a confidential informant for the past 2 months. They suspected Bradford was operating fraudulently and asked me to help gather evidence without alerting any clients." "You knew?" The question came out sharper than I intended. "Not initially. When I first told you about the losses, I genuinely believed they were real. The FBI approached me shortly after sharing their suspicions and asking for my cooperation. They needed to maintain the appearance that the money was gone to avoid tipping off the perpetrators." I took a deep breath, feeling a complex mixture of relief, confusion, and lingering hurt. So the crisis was real, then became, what, a performance? "For about a week, yes. I'm deeply sorry for the deception, Carol. I wasn't allowed to tell anyone, not even you. Especially not you, since your reaction needed to be genuine in case you were under observation." The magnitude of the reversal washed over me. My financial security had been restored as suddenly as it had been taken away. But something far more valuable, my relationship with my daughter, had been irreparably damaged in the process. "Does Amelia know?" I asked quietly. "No one knows except you, me, and the federal agents involved. The public announcement won't come for another few days." A thought occurred to me, sending a chill down my spine despite the warm spring morning. If the money hadn't come back, Amelia would have gone through with it, wouldn't she? The legal separation. Walter's silence was answer enough. "What are you going to do now?" he finally asked. I walked to the window, looking out at the manicured gardens that would remain mine after all. The roses Thomas had planted were beginning to bloom, unaware of the human drama unfolding around them. "I don't know yet," I admitted. Part of me wants to call Amelia immediately and tell her everything's fine, that her inheritance is secure. And the other part wonders what would happen if I didn't tell her right away. If I let her believe just for a little while longer that my financial situation remains precarious. "A test," Walter said softly. "Is that terrible of me?" I asked, genuinely uncertain about the ethics of such a choice. "After what she's done, I don't think so. She's shown you who she truly is, Carol. Or at least who she is right now. Perhaps she needs to live with that revelation for a bit before you decide what comes next." After ending the call with Walter, I sat in my sunroom with a cup of tea watching birds flit around the garden feeders. Thomas had loved birdwatching, keeping detailed journals of each species he spotted. I had maintained the feeders after his death, finding unexpected solace in the small creature's daily visits. My mind worked through possible scenarios. If I told Amelia immediately about the financial recovery, would she suddenly rediscover her familial devotion? Would the legal separation be forgotten? Our Sunday brunches resumed as if nothing had happened, and if so, could I ever look at her the same way again? Knowing that her love had come with financial conditions attached, the alternative, remaining silent about the recovery, felt both satisfying and uncomfortable. It wasn't in my nature to be deceptive or manipulative. Yet Amelia's actions had wounded me deeply, and some childish part of me wanted her to experience consequences for her callousness. By afternoon, I had made my decision. I would wait just for a short time. Not to punish Amelia, but to give myself space to process everything that had happened and to determine what kind of relationship, if any, I wanted with my daughter moving forward. That decision made, I felt a weight lift slightly. For 30 years, I had prioritized Amelia's needs and wants above my own. Perhaps it was time to focus on healing myself first. The next morning, I received a text from Judith. "Call me ASAP. Heard something about Amelia you should know." I called immediately. "What's going on?" Judith's voice was tight with anger. "I ran into Sandra Peterson at the club yesterday. Her son works with Amelia at the hospital." "Yes, I know Marcus. What about him?" "Apparently, Amelia has been telling colleagues that you're completely bankrupt. She told Marcus you might need to move into assisted living because you can't afford to maintain your own home anymore." My hand tightened around the phone. "That's absurd. I never said anything of the sort." "There's more," Judith continued grimly. "Sandra said Amelia asked Marcus if he knew of any affordable senior facilities that accept payment plans." The betrayal cut even deeper than before. Not only was Amelia eager to distance herself legally, but she was actively spreading exaggerations about my situation, making me sound destitute and helpless. "I'm so sorry, Carol," Judith said into my silence. "I thought you should know what she's doing." "Thank you for telling me," I managed. "At least now I have a clearer picture of what I'm dealing with." After hanging up, I paced my living room, fighting a mixture of hurt and indignation. The daughter I had raised, educated, and launched into a prestigious career was now discussing affordable senior facilities for me behind my back, as if I were an inconvenient elder to be managed rather than a parent to be respected. My phone chimed with an email notification. It was from Benjamin with the subject line, "Revised Documents." "Carol attached, please find the revised separation documents reflecting the discussions from our meeting. We would appreciate your prompt attention to this matter. Regards, Benjamin." No personal message, no inquiry about my well-being, just cold legal language and regards. I deleted the email without opening the attachment. Something hardened within me. The wealth that would soon be restored to me represented more than financial security. It was an opportunity to reclaim my power and dignity. If Amelia saw me only as a financial entity, perhaps it was time to use that perception to deliver a necessary lesson. I picked up the phone and called Sarah Jenkins, a formidable attorney I had worked with on various business matters over the years. "Sarah, I need to make some changes to my estate planning," I said when she came on the line. "Are you available to meet tomorrow?" "For you, Carol, absolutely. What kind of changes are we talking about?" "Substantial ones, very substantial." Over the next week, I watched with dismay as Amelia's campaign to portray me as financially destitute escalated. 3 different friends called to express concern after encountering her at various social functions. Each reported similar stories. Carol was selling everything. Carol might need assistance soon. Carol had made terrible financial decisions. Meanwhile, I met with Sarah to restructure my estate plan. The new documents were elegant in their simplicity. The majority of my soon-to-be restored wealth would be directed to a newly established foundation supporting education for children in foster care. A smaller portion would fund medical research at Thomas's former hospital. As for Amelia, I set aside a modest sum, significantly less than she would have received under the original plan, with specific conditions attached. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked after reviewing the final documents. "It's a dramatic change." "I've never been more certain of anything," I replied. "Recent events have clarified my priorities." Sarah nodded, her experienced eyes reflecting understanding without judgment. "Life has a way of revealing people's true characters, doesn't it?" "Indeed it does," I said quietly. "Sometimes in ways we never anticipated." The FBI made their public announcement about the recovery of funds the following Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, Walter confirmed that the first transfers back to my accounts had been processed. My financial resurrection was official. I waited for Amelia's call, certain she would reach out once the news broke. The day passed without word from her, then another. By Friday, it became clear she either hadn't connected the news to my situation or was deliberately maintaining her distance. On Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a delivery man holding an elaborate flower arrangement. "Mrs. Harrington," he confirmed, handing me the bouquet. "These are for you." The card read simply, "Thinking of you, love Amelia and Benjamin." Flowers. After weeks of silence, legal documents, and damaging gossip, my daughter had sent flowers. No phone call, no visit. Just a generic arrangement that could have been ordered with the click of a button. I placed the bouquet on the kitchen counter, staring at it while an idea formed in my mind. It was time to bring this painful chapter to a conclusion, to confront the truth directly rather than allowing it to fester. I picked up my phone and composed a text to both Amelia and Benjamin. "I'd like to invite you to dinner at La Maison tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. There are some important matters we need to discuss. Please confirm if you can attend." Benjamin responded within minutes. "We'll be there." La Maison was Boston's most exclusive restaurant with a months-long waiting list and prices that made even wealthy patrons wince. It had been a favorite celebration spot for our family over the years, the venue for Amelia's medical school graduation dinner and several milestone anniversaries. I arrived early, dressed in a new Chanel suit purchased that afternoon. The maitre d' escorted me to a private dining alcove overlooking the Boston Common, its spring foliage glowing in the evening light. "Mrs. Harrington, wonderful to see you again," he said, pulling out my chair. "Your usual champagne." "Yes, thank you, Philippe. I'm celebrating tonight." He raised an eyebrow inquiringly. "A personal revelation," I explained with a smile. "Sometimes life gives us exactly the lessons we need, even when they are painful." "Very philosophical." He nodded appreciatively. "I'll have your champagne brought right over." 20 minutes later, Amelia and Benjamin arrived. Their expressions shifted from polite neutrality to poorly concealed surprise as they took in the upscale setting and my elegant appearance. "Mom," Amelia said cautiously, kissing my cheek, "this is unexpected. I thought you were economizing." "Life is full of surprises," I replied, gesturing for them to be seated. "Thank you for coming." Benjamin glanced around nervously. "Carol, this restaurant is extremely expensive. Are you sure this is the best choice given your circumstances?" "My circumstances?" I repeated, taking a deliberate sip of champagne. "Yes, let's talk about those, shall we?" The waiter approached and I ordered the chef's tasting menu with wine pairings for all three of us, a $500 per person experience. Benjamin's eyes widened, but he remained silent. After the waiter departed, Amelia leaned forward. "Mom, what's going on? Last month you told us you lost most of your money, and now you're ordering the most expensive meal in Boston. Have you been following the financial news this week?" I asked calmly. They exchanged glances. "We've been extremely busy," Benjamin offered. "Hospital hours for Amelia, a big case for me. Too busy to notice the headlines about Bradford Investments about the FBI recovering all funds from their clients." Amelia's face drained of color. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that my financial crisis has been resolved. All my assets have been returned plus interest for damages." Benjamin's expression flickered between shock and what looked disturbingly like calculation. That's wonderful news, Carol. When did you find out?" "A week ago," I said, watching their reactions carefully. "Walter called me the morning after the FBI confirmed the recovery." "A week?" Amelia's voice rose slightly. "Why didn't you tell us immediately?" I looked my daughter directly in the eyes. "Why would I? You made it abundantly clear that you wanted to sever our relationship when you believed I had nothing of financial value to offer you." "That's not fair," she protested. "We were concerned about potential complications. Were you? Is that why you've been telling your colleagues that I might need to move into an affordable senior facility? Is that why you sent legal documents to formalize our separation instead of calling to check on my well-being?" Benjamin jumped in. Carol, you're misinterpreting our actions. We were simply being practical about a difficult situation. No, Benjamin. You were being selfish and callous about a difficult situation. There's a difference. The first course arrived, delicate scallops with truffle foam. We ate in uncomfortable silence for several minutes. Finally, Amelia spoke again. So, everything's back to normal now, financially, I mean. My financial situation has been restored, yes, but nothing else is back to normal, as you put it. What does that mean? A note of anxiety crept into her voice. I set down my fork. It means I've revised my estate plan. The majority of my assets will now go to a foundation supporting foster children's education. A portion will fund cardiac research at your father's hospital. And yes, I've set aside something for you, but it's contingent on demonstrated compassion and ethical behavior. You're cutting me out of your will. Amelia's voice rose, drawing glances from nearby tables. I'm aligning my legacy with my values, I corrected. Something I should have done years ago. Benjamin placed a restraining hand on Amelia's arm. I'm sure we can discuss this rationally. Your recent experience was traumatic, Carol, and perhaps you're making decisions based on emotional reactions rather than stop. I raised my hand. I'm not interested in being managed, Benjamin. My decisions aren't emotional reactions. They're considered responses to revealed truths. The truth is that when I appeared to have lost my fortune, my only daughter treated me like a liability to be discarded. That reveals something fundamental about our relationship that cannot be unlearned. Amelia's face flushed. That's not fair. It wasn't my idea to create the legal separation. It was Benjamin who suggested it. Benjamin's head snapped toward her. Amelia, that's not true. You were the one who was concerned about potential claims on our assets. I watched their mutual betrayal unfold with a strange detachment. It doesn't matter whose idea it was. You both pursued it. You both treated me as a financial inconvenience rather than family. Mom, please. Amelia's voice softened, taking on the persuasive tone she had used since childhood when trying to get her way. We made a mistake. We were worried and acted hastily. Can't we move past this? We can certainly move forward, I replied. But not by pretending this never happened. Not by ignoring what's been revealed. What do you want from us? Benjamin asked bluntly. Nothing. That's the point. I don't want anything from people who value wealth over love, convenience over compassion. The main course arrived, perfectly cooked Wagyu beef with seasonal vegetables. The waiter poured expensive red wine into our glasses with flourish, unaware of the tension at the table. So that's it, Amelia asked after he left. 30 years as a family and you're just writing us off. Interesting that you see it that way, I noted. I'm not the one who drafted legal documents to sever our relationship. I'm simply responding to actions you initiated. But you're punishing us financially, Benjamin interjected. That seems vindictive. I turned to him with raised eyebrows. Is that how you see inheritance, Benjamin? As something you're entitled to rather than a gift? Perhaps that's part of the problem. We continued eating in strained silence. I could almost see the calculations running behind Amelia's eyes as she tried to formulate a response that might salvage her inheritance without requiring genuine contrition. As dessert was served, an elaborate chocolate creation with gold leaf, I decided to offer one final thought. You know what the saddest part of all this is? I said quietly. It's that neither of you has actually apologized. You've expressed regret about the consequences of your actions, but not for the actions themselves or the pain they caused. Amelia set down her spoon. I'm sorry, Mom. Truly. I was scared and reacted badly. I should have been more supportive. The words sounded right, but they came too late, delivered only after the revelation that my wealth had been restored. I wondered if she even recognized the difference between genuine remorse and strategic backpedaling. Thank you for saying that. I replied, not entirely sure if I believed her. Time will tell whether it's sincere. As I signaled for the check, Benjamin made one last attempt. Carol, surely we can work this out. Family is too important to let money come between us. I signed the credit card slip, over $500 for dinner, and looked at him steadily. That's precisely the point, Benjamin. Family should be too important to let money come between us. But for you and Amelia, it wasn't. That's the lesson here, one I hope you both eventually learn. I stood to leave. I'm not closing the door permanently, but rebuilding trust requires honesty, and right now, I don't believe either of you understands what you've broken or how to fix it. As I walked out of La Maison alone, I felt a strange mixture of sorrow and liberation. The truth had been painful to confront, but there was clarity in it. A clarity that might eventually lead to healing, though the path would not be easy or swift. In the months following that revelatory dinner, I moved back into my Boston mansion, which had never actually gone on the market. The rooms that had once felt cavernous in my loneliness now became spaces for reinvention. I turned Thomas's old study into an office for the newly established Harrington Foundation, dedicated to supporting education for children in foster care. The foundation gave me purpose beyond wealth management or social appearances. Each scholarship awarded, each program funded, felt like a tribute to the scared 8-year-old Amelia had once been, and to all the children facing similar uncertainties. Amelia's attempts at reconciliation began predictably. The day after our dinner, an enormous flower arrangement arrived with a card expressing deepest regrets and hopes for healing. I placed it in the foyer, appreciating its beauty while recognizing the gesture's insufficiency. Next came emails, carefully worded messages that danced around the core issues while emphasizing family bonds and shared history. I responded politely but briefly, neither encouraging nor discouraging continued communication. I needed time to process my own feelings before deciding what relationship, if any, I wanted with my daughter. Benjamin called 3 times, leaving increasingly urgent voicemails about clearing the air and moving forward as a family. His law firm's letterhead no longer appeared on any correspondence, a small but telling change. Through mutual friends, I heard that Amelia and Benjamin were telling a revised version of events portraying the situation as a misunderstanding during a stressful time. The narrative carefully avoided mentioning their attempts to legally separate themselves from me or Amelia's disparaging comments to colleagues. 6 weeks after our confrontational dinner, I agreed to meet Amelia for coffee at a neutral location, a small cafe near the public garden where neither of us had history. She arrived 10 minutes early, a habit from childhood that reflected her perpetual anxiety about being late. "Mom," she said, rising to embrace me. I accepted the hug but didn't fully return it, still maintaining emotional boundaries. "You look well," I observed, noting her designer outfit and perfect makeup, armor she had always worn in uncomfortable situations. "Thank you, so do you." She fidgeted with her napkin. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since our dinner." "I'm glad to hear that." "I behaved terribly." She continued, looking down at her hands. "There's no excuse for it. I got scared about money and acted in ways that betrayed everything you and Dad taught me about family." It was the first time she had mentioned Thomas in the context of her actions, an acknowledgement that felt significant. "Your father would have been deeply disappointed," I said quietly. "He believed family was sacred regardless of circumstances." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know, I've been thinking about him a lot lately, wondering what he would say if he could see how I behaved." "What do you think he would say?" She wiped her eyes carefully. "He would ask me what I valued more, money or the people who loved me unconditionally, and he would be right to ask." We talked for nearly 2 hours that day. Amelia shared things she had never expressed before, her deep-seated insecurity about being abandoned, which had transformed into an obsessive need for financial security. She admitted that her specialty choice in medicine had been driven more by income potential than passion. And she confessed that her marriage to Benjamin, while not loveless, had been heavily influenced by his family's wealth and connections. "I've been chasing security my whole life," she said toward the end of our conversation. "Always afraid that what happened to me as a child would somehow happen again, that I'd lose everything and everyone overnight." "Fear is a powerful motivator," I acknowledged, "but it makes for poor decisions." "I know that now." She reached hesitantly for my hand. "Can you forgive me, Mom?" I considered the question carefully. "Forgiveness isn't a single moment, Amelia. It's a process. I'm working on it, but trust takes longer to rebuild than it does to break." She nodded, accepting this less than complete absolution. "What can I do to start rebuilding?" "Actions, not words," I replied simply. Show me who you truly are through choices that reflect values, not self-interest. In the weeks that followed, small changes appeared in Amelia's life. She began volunteering at a free clinic in a low-income neighborhood, something she had always refused to do previously, citing time constraints. She reduced her hours at her lucrative plastic surgery practice to make room for this commitment. Benjamin was slower to demonstrate genuine change. His career continued to focus on corporate law representing wealthy clients, though he did take on one pro bono case for a family-facing eviction. Whether this represented true growth or strategic image management remained unclear to me. Our Sunday brunches resumed, though, with a different quality than before. The conversations were more honest, sometimes uncomfortably so. We discussed topics we had previously avoided: Amelia's materialistic tendencies, my emotional reserve, our mutual difficulty with vulnerability. 6 months after the financial crisis and its resolution, I invited Amelia and Benjamin to the mansion for dinner. It was the first time they had returned to the house since everything had happened. "I have something to show you," I said, after the meal, leading them to what had been the formal living room and was now the foundation's headquarters. The walls displayed photographs of foster children who had received educational scholarships along with their stories and achievements. A large map tracked programs across the country supported by foundation grants. "This is what I've been building," I explained. "A legacy that extends beyond our family." Amelia studied the photographs quietly. "They remind me of myself at that age," she finally said, trying so hard to look brave while feeling terrified inside. "You were brave," I assured her. "Brave enough to trust new parents after everything you'd been through." "I want to help," she said suddenly. "Not just by writing a check, but really help. Could I offer medical workshops for the older students' career guidance?" It was the first time she had suggested giving her time rather than money, a subtle but important distinction. "I think that would be wonderful," I replied sincerely. That night marked a turning point in our healing process. Not an end point, but a moment when potential for genuine reconnection became visible on the horizon. 1 year after the financial crisis that revealed so much about my relationship with my daughter, I made another revision to my estate plan. The bulk of my wealth would still go to the foundation, but Amelia's portion increased. Not to the level of the original plan, but substantially more than the token amount I had initially designated during my anger and disappointment. The conditions remained, though softer in their framing. Rather than requiring demonstrated ethical behavior, the new language spoke of continuing the foundation's mission and maintaining its values. A trust rather than a test. On what would have been Thomas's 75th birthday, Amelia joined me for a private dinner at home. After dessert, she presented me with a small wrapped package. "I found this recently, so," she said as I opened it. Inside was a journal, Thomas's handwriting filling the pages with observations about birds, weather patterns, and family moments. The final entry, dated just days before his sudden death, read, "Watched A and Carol in the garden today, heads together over the roses." So different in temperament, yet connected by something deeper than blood. Family isn't always easy, but it's always worth fighting for. Tears filled my eyes as I read his words. "He always saw the best in both of us," I said softly. "He did," Amelia agreed, "and he believed we were stronger together than apart. I lost sight of that for a while, but I'm trying to find my way back." We sat in companionable silence, the journal between us, like a bridge connecting past and future. The journey of healing wasn't complete. Perhaps it never would be entirely. But we were traveling in the right direction. The crisis that had threatened to destroy our family had ultimately forced us to examine what family truly meant. Not a financial arrangement or social obligation, but a choice to remain connected through difficulties, to learn from mistakes, and to grow beyond them. My fortune had returned, yes, but more importantly, I had gained clarity about what wealth actually meant. Not the numbers in bank accounts or properties owned, but the richness of authentic relationships and purposeful living. That night, looking across the table at my daughter, flawed but trying just as I was, I felt grateful for difficult lessons that had ultimately led to deeper wisdom. Some inheritances couldn't be measured in dollars or documented in legal papers. Those were the legacies that mattered most. Have you ever discovered what truly matters to you only after losing something you thought was essential? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more life lessons from unexpected places. Remember, sometimes our greatest growth comes from our most painful challenges. Thank you for listening to my story today.